Keanu Reeves walked into the company lobby quietly. The elevator doors had just closed behind him on the 47th floor. Morning light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. The lobby was pristine, marble floors polished to a mirror shine. Modern art hung on white walls. Everything screamed wealth and success. But Keanu, he looked like he'd just stepped out of a coffee shop. No suit, no assistant, just a worn leather jacket that had seen 1,000 miles, faded jeans, old sneakers with scuffed toes, a simple black shirt underneath. Nothing about him said executive. Nothing about him said power. He walked toward the reception desk with his hands in his pockets, calm, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. The receptionist sat behind a sleek marble counter. Her eyes were locked on her computer screen, typing, clicking, completely absorbed. Keanu stopped in front of her desk, waited. She didn't look up immediately. 5 seconds passed, then 10. Finally, she glanced up. Her eyes scanned him quickly. Head to toe in less than a second. The judgment was instant. You could see it in her expression, the slight tightening around her eyes, the way her lips pressed together. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. Her tone was flat, professional, but cold, no warmth, no welcome. Keanu looked at her directly. "No," he said simply. His voice was quiet, respectful. She sighed, just barely, but enough to notice. She pointed toward the hallway without looking at him again. "You'll have to wait there." "Not please, not. Someone will be with you shortly." Just a dismissal. Keanu nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said. He turned and walked toward the waiting area she'd indicated. His footsteps barely made a sound on the expensive marble. He sat down on a leather couch, crossed one ankle over his knee, and waited, quiet, patient. Like he belonged nowhere and everywhere at the same time. What no one realized was this. They had just asked the owner of the company to wait like he didn't belong. The man who built this entire building, who signed every major contract, who owned 53% of every square foot around them, was sitting on a couch, unnoticed, dismissed, treated like he was nobody. And the shocking part, this was exactly what he wanted. Because Keanu hadn't come here to be recognized. He came here to see something far more important, the truth. Would you reveal who you are immediately? Would you demand respect, or would you stay quiet and watch? Because what Keanu was about to discover in the next few minutes would expose something darker than anyone expected. And it all started with being invisible. Most people inside that building had no idea who he was. They walked past him every single day in magazines, on movie posters, on screens. But here, in this building, in this context, Keanu Reeves was invisible. And that's because most of them didn't know the full story. Keanu Reeves was the co-founder of the company. Not just an investor, not just a silent partner, the co-founder, the majority shareholder. He owned 53% of everything around them, every desk, every computer. Every contract signed in that building existed because of a decision he made years ago. But let's go back. 10 years ago, Keanu met a man named Dr. Marcus Chen. Marcus was a brilliant engineer, MIT graduate, specializing in sustainable energy storage. They met at a conference in San Francisco, got talking over coffee, shared a vision. What if we could change how the world stores energy? What if we could make renewable energy actually reliable? That conversation turned into a partnership. Keanu provided the initial capital. Marcus provided the innovation. For years, he stayed away from the office. They started in a garage, literally, 3 employees, 1 prototype, endless late nights. But it worked. Within 2 years, they had their first patent. Within 5 years, they had government contracts, energy companies calling, investors lining up. The company grew fast. Too fast, maybe. Soon they had offices in 12 countries, over 1,400 employees, revenue in the billions, and Keanu. He stepped back. Marcus ran operations. Keanu stayed behind the scenes. Emails, calls, reports, never appearances. He trusted Marcus. He trusted the leadership team they built together. He believed in the mission. And for a long time, everything seemed perfect. Quarterly reports came in. Revenue climbing, expansion plans approved. Board meetings filled with optimism and growth projections. But 6 months ago, something shifted. Keanu started noticing inconsistencies. Small things at first. Expense reports that didn't quite add up. Consulting fees to firms he'd never heard of. Bonuses for executives that seemed unusually high. While employee raises had mysteriously stalled. He asked Marcus about it. Marcus assured him everything was fine. Standard operating costs. He said, growing pains. But Keanu's instinct told him something different, so he started digging. Quietly. Reviewing financial documents himself. Reading every email thread he had access to. And the more he looked, the more questions he had. That morning, he came unannounced. He didn't tell Marcus he was coming. Didn't notify security. Didn't send an email to HR. He just showed up, dressed like a regular person, looking like someone who didn't belong, not to show power, but to see the truth, the real truth, not the polished version presented in boardrooms, not the carefully crafted reports sent to shareholders. He wanted to see what happened when nobody knew he was watching. How did people treat each other? How did leadership behave when they thought no one important was around? What was the real culture of this company? Because Keanu had learned something over the years. You don't see who people really are when they're performing. You see who they are when they think it doesn't matter, when they think no one's watching, when they think the person in front of them has no power. That's when the truth comes out, and sitting in that waiting area, being ignored, being dismissed, being looked at like he didn't belong. Keanu was getting his answer. He sat there quietly. The leather couch was comfortable enough. Expensive, obviously. Everything in this building was expensive, but comfort didn't matter right now. Keanu wasn't here for comfort. He was here to observe, and what he was observing was telling him everything he needed to know. Executives walked past him, one after another. Designer suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, polished leather shoes, briefcases that gleamed under the lobby lights, confidence in every step. One glanced at his clothes and looked away, just a flicker of his eyes. Down, then up, then away. The judgment took less than a second, but it was there, clear as day. Another laughed on the phone, loud, bragging about a golf game, about a new car he just bought, about a restaurant reservation that took months to get. He walked right past Keanu, didn't even notice him. Like he was part of the furniture, invisible. A woman in a sharp gray suit walked by with her assistant. They were discussing a presentation. "Make sure the slides have more images," she said. "The board gets bored with too many words." Her assistant nodded frantically, taking notes. Neither of them looked at Keanu, not even a glance. Behind the glass walls, the boardroom was alive. Keanu could see everything. 10 people inside, maybe 12. Laughter echoed through the glass. Whiskey glasses on the table. At 10:30 in the morning, expensive watches catching the light. One man had his feet up on the conference table, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place. Another was showing off something on his phone. Everyone gathered around. More laughter. Keanu watched. His face remained calm, neutral, but his eyes were taking in every detail. 7 minutes passed. Then 10, then 15. No one spoke to him. No one offered water. No one asked if he needed anything. No one cared. A young employee walked by carrying a stack of files. She looked stressed, tired, like she'd been working all night. She dropped one of the files. Papers scattered across the marble floor. Keanu stood up immediately, bent down to help her pick them up. She looked at him, startled. "I've got it," she said quickly. Her tone wasn't kind. It was defensive, almost annoyed, like he was intruding on her space. Keanu handed her the papers anyway. "No problem," he said softly. She snatched them from his hand. Didn't say thank you. Just walked away quickly, like touching him had contaminated her somehow. Keanu sat back down, crossed his arms, waited 20 minutes now. Still nothing. Then a man in his 50s approached. Gray hair, perfectly styled, tie loose around his neck, cologne so strong you could smell it from 10 feet away. He was clearly senior leadership, executive level. You could tell by the way he walked, like the building bent around him. He stopped near the reception desk, glanced at Keanu, then at the receptionist. "Who's this?" he asked, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. The receptionist barely looked up. "Someone without an appointment," she said. "I told him to wait." The man chuckled, a low, dismissive sound. "Security getting soft around here," he muttered. He shook his head, then walked straight into the boardroom. The door closed behind him. More laughter erupted inside. Someone poured more whiskey. Someone else loosened their tie. The arrogance was tangible. You could feel it through the glass. These weren't people running a company. These were people enjoying the spoils. Keanu remained still. His expression didn't change, but inside, his mind was working, processing, cataloging every interaction, every dismissal, every moment of disrespect. 23 minutes now, and still no one had asked his name, no one had offered help, no one had shown even basic courtesy. And that told him everything. This wasn't just about him being ignored. This was about a culture where people were judged by appearance, where respect was given based on status, where kindness was reserved for those who mattered. And if this was how they treated a stranger, how were they treating the employees? How were they treating the people who actually did the work? The people who built this company from the ground up? Keanu didn't need to guess. He could already see the answer. Keanu stood up, slowly, Deliberately, no rush, no anger in his movements, just calm, controlled purpose. He'd seen enough. 24 minutes of being invisible. 24 minutes of being dismissed. 24 minutes of watching people reveal exactly who they were. And now, it was time. He walked straight toward the boardroom, his footsteps quiet but steady. The receptionist noticed. Her head snapped up. "Sir, you can't just—" But Keanu was already at the door. He didn't knock, he simply opened it. The handle turned smoothly, the door swung open, and suddenly, the laughter stopped. Conversation died mid-sentence. All eyes turned to him, 12 faces, all staring. Confusion written across every single one. "Who the hell are you?" One of them demanded. It was the same man who'd mocked him in the lobby. The one who'd made the comment about security. Now he was standing, chest puffed out, trying to assert dominance. Keanu didn't answer immediately. He walked further into the room, calm, unrushed, each step measured. He moved toward the head of the table, the seat reserved for the most important person in the room. Everyone watched him. Some confused, some annoyed, some starting to look nervous, like something in their gut was telling them this wasn't right. Keanu reached into his jacket pocket. Slowly, he pulled out a simple business card, white card, black text, nothing fancy. He placed it on the polished conference table, right in the center, where everyone could see. The executives leaned forward, squinting, reading, and then the color drained from their faces. Keanu Reeves, co-founder and majority shareholder, silence, complete, absolute silence. You could hear the air conditioning humming, the distant sound of traffic outside. Someone's breath caught in their throat, the man who had demanded to know who he was. His hand gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. This is some kind of joke, right? He stammered. His voice had lost all its confidence. Keanu looked at him directly, his gaze steady, unflinching. "Does it look like I'm joking?" The man's mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. A woman across the table whispered, "Oh my God." Her hand covered her mouth. Another executive stood up quickly, too quickly. His chair scraped against the floor, hands raised defensively, like he was trying to stop what was already happening. "Mr. Reeves, we had no idea." "I know," Keanu interrupted. His voice was calm, but there was something cold underneath it, something unmovable. That was the point. He let those words hang in the air, let them sink in. Then he scanned the room slowly, making eye contact with each person, one by one. Everyone avoided his gaze, looking down, looking away, looking anywhere but at him. "I've been sitting outside for 24 minutes. Keanu continued, his tone even, matter of fact. "Not one of you acknowledged me." Silence. "Not one of you asked if I needed help." More silence. "You judged me the second you saw me." One woman tried to speak, her voice shaking. "We didn't know who you—" "Exactly?" Keanu said, cutting her off. "You didn't know." He paused, letting the weight of that settle. And that's when character shows. The room felt smaller now, the air thicker, like the walls were closing in. Some executives shifted in their seats, uncomfortable, exposed. Others stared at the table, ashamed, or maybe just afraid. The whiskey glasses suddenly seemed inappropriate. The loosened ties, the casual arrogance that had filled this room just minutes ago. All of it felt wrong now. Someone cleared their throat. "Mr. Reeves, if we'd known." "That's the problem," Keanu said quietly. "You only care now because you know." He picked up the business card, slipped it back into his pocket. Respect shouldn't depend on who someone is. Before anyone could speak, the door opened again, everyone's heads turned. A young man stepped inside, mid-20s, button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up. His face was pale, almost ghostly white. His hands were shaking, visibly trembling. He held a manila folder against his chest, like he was protecting it. Or maybe like it was protecting him. Keanu recognized him immediately. Daniel Park, a junior analyst who'd been with the company since year 2, one of the original employees, back when they were still working out of that garage. Daniel had started as an intern, worked his way up through dedication and skill. He was one of the good ones. Honest, hardworking, the kind of person who stayed late not because he was told to, but because he cared. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Daniel said. His voice was unsteady, barely above a whisper. "But you need to see this." He walked toward Keanu, not toward the other executives, toward Keanu, like he knew exactly who to trust. He handed the folder over. His hands were still shaking. Keanu took it, felt the weight of it. The other executives shifted uncomfortably. Some exchanged glances, nervous glances. Others stared at Daniel, eyes narrowed, like they were trying to intimidate him into silence. But Daniel didn't back down. Keanu opened the folder. Inside were documents, financial records, emails, wire transfer receipts, contract drafts. His eyes moved across the pages, line by line, number by number. His expression didn't change, but the energy in the room did. You could feel it shift, like the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Tension coiled tight. After a long moment, Keanu looked up. His face was still calm, but his eyes, they were different now. Harder, colder. He placed the folder on the table, spread some of the documents out. "Explain this," he said quietly. No one spoke. Not a single word. You could hear someone breathing heavily, nervous breathing, panicked breathing. Daniel stepped forward. He'd found his courage now. His voice was stronger. "For the last 8 months. He began. "There's been a plan in motion to sell the company." Gasps echoed around the room. Someone dropped their pen. It clattered onto the table. "Not a public sale." Daniel continued. "A private deal." He pointed at the documents. "Orchestrated by 4 people in this room." Several executives went rigid, frozen in place. "They've been siphoning funds into offshore accounts," Daniel said, his voice growing steadier with each word. "Inflating consulting contracts with shell companies that don't actually provide any services." He pulled out another document, laid it on top of the others, preparing to transfer majority ownership to a corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. One executive shot to his feet. His chair flew backward. "That's a lie," he shouted. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. "That's a complete fabrication?" Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He just looked at the man calmly. "I have the emails," Daniel said. He pulled out printed pages. Dozens of them. The wire transfers. More documents. The draft agreements. He spread them across the table like playing cards. All of it. Every single transaction. The executive who'd shouted went pale. His mouth opened but no sound came out. Daniel turned back to address the room. They were going to finalize it next month, cash out with $47 million between the 4 of them, and disappear. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence, and leave 1,400 employees without jobs. Daniel added. His voice cracked slightly on that last part, because these weren't just numbers to him. These were people, colleagues, friends, people with families, mortgages, kids in college, dreams and futures that were about to be destroyed. The room exploded. Voices overlapping, denials flying, accusations, finger pointing. "I had nothing to do with. This is insane. I never. You can't prove." Keanu raised one hand, just one hand, not high, not dramatic. But everyone saw it, and silence returned, immediate, complete. He looked at the 4 executives Daniel had pointed to. 4 men in their 50s and 60s, men he'd trusted, men he'd promoted, men who'd sat across from him in meetings and smiled and shook his hand. "Is this true?" Keanu asked. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. But there was steel underneath. One of them, a man in his 60s with silver hair, tried to compose himself, tried to find the right words. "It's more complicated than he's making it sound." "Yes or no?" Keanu said. The man's jaw clenched. His eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. There wasn't one. Finally, his shoulders slumped. "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper, but everyone heard it. Keanu nodded slowly, like he'd expected this, like some part of him had known all along. He turned to Daniel. "How did you find this?" Daniel took a breath. 2 weeks ago, I was asked to audit some expense files. He explained. "I found discrepancies. Numbers that didn't match, so I kept digging." "Why didn't you report it sooner?" Daniel's expression darkened. "I tried. I sent emails to HR, to the compliance team, to internal audit." He paused. They were all ignored. Keanu's eyes narrowed, because they were in on it too. Daniel nodded. 3 people in HR, 2 in compliance, all getting payouts. The betrayal went deeper than anyone had imagined. Should people like this be forgiven? Keanu looked around the room slowly, taking in every face, every expression. Some looked terrified, others looked defiant, a few just looked defeated, like they knew it was over. He picked up the folder Daniel had given him, held it for a moment, the weight of betrayal in his hands. "I didn't come here to be recognized," he said finally. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "I came to see how you treat people you think don't matter." He paused. "Let that sink in. People you think have no power. People you think are beneath you." The executives who weren't involved shifted uncomfortably. Because even they knew. They'd all walked past him. They'd all ignored him. Judgment based on appearance was universal in this room. "And what I saw," Keanu continued, "was exactly what I was afraid of." He set the folder down. This company was built on a simple idea. Innovation with integrity. Technology that serves people, not profit that serves greed. His eyes hardened. But somewhere along the way you forgot that. One of the guilty executives tried to speak. "Mr. Reeves, if you just give us a chance to explain." "Explain what?" Keanu interrupted. How you were going to steal from 1,400 families. How you were going to destroy what took a decade to build. The man went silent. There's nothing to explain, Keanu said. He turned to the 4 men Daniel had identified. You're all terminated. Effective immediately. The words landed like a hammer. You can't do that! One of them shouted. We have contracts! Keanu's expression didn't change. Contracts that include clauses about fiduciary duty and ethical conduct. You violated both. He looked at Daniel. Daniel, please call security and our legal team. Daniel nodded and pulled out his phone. His hands weren't shaking anymore. This is ridiculous. Another executive yelled. We built this company too. No, Keanu said quietly. You exploited it. There's a difference. The door opened. 4 security officers entered. Professional, calm. They'd clearly been briefed. Escort these 4 gentlemen out of the building. Keanu instructed. They're to take nothing with them. Personal belongings will be shipped. You can't treat us like this, one of them protested. But security was already moving, firm but professional. Your access cards are deactivated, Keanu continued. Your company email's locked. Legal proceedings will begin Monday. One of the men looked at Keanu with pure hatred. You'll regret this, he hissed. Keanu met his gaze, unflinching. The only thing I regret is trusting you. Security led them out, one by one, their protests echoing down the hallway, getting fainter, until silence returned. The remaining executives sat frozen. Not sure if they were next, not sure if they should speak, not sure of anything anymore. Keanu turned to them. The rest of you have a choice to make. Everyone leaned forward slightly. Listening. You can stay, Keanu said. But not under the same conditions. Not with the same culture. He walked to the window, looked out at the city below. This company is going to change, starting today. He turned back, new leadership structure. Full financial transparency. An ethics board with real power. And every single person in this company, from entry level to executive, will be valued equally. Some heads nodded, tentatively. If you can't commit to that, Keanu continued, leave now. No hard feelings. Nobody moved. But if you stay and I find out you've been part of this corruption, or if you treat people with the disrespect I witnessed today, he let the sentence hang. You're gone, no second chances. One executive raised her hand slightly. What about HR and compliance? The ones Daniel mentioned, already handled, Keanu said. Legal is reviewing their involvement now. He looked at Daniel. Daniel, you're promoted to Director of Internal Oversight. Daniel's eyes widened. Sir, I'm just an analyst. You're the only person in this building who had the courage to do the right thing when it mattered most. Keanu said. That's the only qualification that matters to me. Daniel nodded slowly, overwhelmed but determined. Keanu addressed the room one final time. Meeting adjourned. We reconvene tomorrow at 8 a.m. Come prepared to rebuild. He walked toward the door, then stopped, turned back, and one more thing. Everyone waited. The receptionist downstairs. She stays. Confusion crossed several faces. She was doing her job, Keanu explained. She didn't know who I was, and that's fine. But everyone else who walked past me, who judged me, who dismissed me, remember this feeling. Remember what it's like to be on the other side. Later the employees gathered. Word had spread fast. The way it always does in any company. Whispers in hallways. Texts between departments. Emails forwarded in secret. Within an hour, everyone knew something massive had happened. 4 executives escorted out. The co-founder, someone most people didn't even know existed, had shown up unannounced. And everything was changing. The main conference hall was packed. Standing room only. Over 300 people crammed inside. Another 1,000 watching via video link from other offices around the world. Confusion was everywhere. You could see it in their faces. Fear, uncertainty. Anxiety whispers filled the air. Did he fire everyone? Are we losing our jobs? Is the company shutting down? I heard we're being sold. I heard we're bankrupt. Rumors spreading like wildfire. Each one darker than the last. The door at the front of the hall opened. Keanu walked in. No fanfare, no introduction, no podium, just him, walking to the center of the room. The whisper stopped, immediately. Complete silence. You could hear the air conditioning humming, someone's phone vibrating. That's how quiet it was. Keanu stood there for a moment, looking at the faces. These were the people who actually built the company. The engineers, the analysts, the support staff, the ones who came in early and stayed late, the ones who believed in the mission. I know you're scared, he began. His voice was gentle, but it carried through the room. I know you've heard things, rumors. Speculation. Heads nodded. Some of them are true. Keanu admitted. A ripple of anxiety passed through the crowd. This company was being sold out from under you. Gasps, murmurs, but people you trusted. People in leadership positions. People who were supposed to protect what we built. Faces hardened, anger replacing fear. They were planning to cash out and disappear. Keanu continued, leaving 1,400 of you without jobs, without severance, without warning. Someone in the back swore loudly. Others nodded in agreement. But that's not happening, Keanu said firmly. The room went quiet again. Your jobs are safe. Relief. You could physically see it wash over the crowd. Shoulders relaxed. People exhaled. Some wiped their eyes. One woman in the front row put her hand over her heart. I didn't come here to destroy what we built. Keanu said, I came here to protect it. To protect you. He paused, let that settle. Because this company, it's not the building. It's not the patents or the contracts. It's you. The people who show up every day and do the work. Applause started, scattered at first. Then building, Keanu raised a hand gently. The applause died down. But I need to be honest with you about something else. The room tensed again. What happened today wasn't just about money, he said. It was about respect. He scanned the faces. I sat in your lobby this morning for 24 minutes. I was ignored, dismissed, judged. Some people looked confused. Others started to understand. Not because I did anything wrong, Keanu continued, but because I didn't look like I mattered. I was wearing old clothes, no suit, no credentials visible, and because of that, I was treated like I was nobody. The room was completely silent now, everyone listening. And if that's how your leadership treats a stranger? He let the question hang. How do they treat you? The silence became heavier. Because everyone in that room knew the answer. A voice came from the back male. Older. They don't. Keanu nodded. Exactly. More voices joined in. They don't learn our names. They don't ask about our work. They walk past us like we're invisible. They only talk to us when something goes wrong. The frustration was pouring out now. Years of it. Building up. Finally being released. Keanu waited. Let them speak. Let them be heard. When the voices quieted, he continued. This company will never operate that way again, he said. His voice was firm, resolute. Titles don't earn respect. Character does. How you treat people when you think they have no power, that's who you really are. He paused, and I saw who some of our leaders really were today. That's why they're gone. Nods throughout the room. Agreement. Approval. We're gonna rebuild, Keanu said. Together. New leadership. New values. Same mission. But this time we do it right. A woman in the front row raised her hand. Keanu pointed to her. What do you need from us? She asked. Her voice was genuine, eager. Keanu smiled, genuine. The first smile anyone had seen from him all day. Honesty, he said. Integrity. Kindness. He looked around the room. The things that should have been here all along. The things that got lost somewhere between the garage and the executive floor. Another hand went up. A younger man. How do we know this won't happen again? Good question. Fair question. You hold me accountable. Keanu said simply. You hold each other accountable. We'll create a culture where speaking up is rewarded, not punished. He gestured toward the side of the room, where Daniel was standing. Daniel Park risked his career to expose corruption. He could have stayed quiet, kept his head down, protected himself. But he didn't, and because of him, this company still exists. Everyone turned to look at Daniel. Applause erupted loud, sustained, genuine. Daniel's face turned red, but he stood taller, proud. That's the culture we're building, Keanu said. We're doing the right thing matters more than protecting your position. The applause continued. Building, growing, not polite corporate applause, real applause. The kind that comes from relief and hope and gratitude. Keanu waited for it to die down. We start fresh on Monday, he said. New org structure will be posted tomorrow. Town halls like this will happen monthly. And my door whenever I'm here is open. To anyone. For anything? He started to walk toward the exit, then stopped, turned back. The room waited. Thank you, Keanu said, for believing in what we started, for staying, for caring enough to be scared right now. That fear means you're invested. And that's exactly the kind of people I want building this company. He left. The room exploded into conversation. But this time it was different. Not fear, not anxiety. Hope, excitement, possibility. Because something fundamental had shifted. Power without character had been exposed, and integrity had won.